It's winners and losers time in the Big 12 Conference. Welcome in. I'm Pete Mundo. We're Heartland College Sports. We do this every week. We recap the week. We put a bow on it with winners and losers from the week that's been. Make sure you're subscribed because college football is here. We will have game reaction. We already have previews up on the site, on the page, on the YouTube channel, and on the podcast. So we'll start with three winners, and then we'll get to the losers this week. And also drop in your questions and leave that like button right now because that helps us out tremendously. We'll do some Q&A at the end of the show as well. So I'll give you my winners for the week. And this first winner is not a Big 12 winner necessarily, but it's some of the biggest news in college football. The SEC is coming out a huge winner. Now, before you say, Pete, you can't stand the SEC. You hate the SEC. Why are you making them a winner this week? I'm making the SEC a winner this week because they have gamed the system. So you may have seen on Thursday that the news came out that the SEC is going to move to a 9-game conference schedule. They'll have 3 rivals they play every year. They'll rotate the other 6 SEC games, and then they'll play at least one non-conference game against a Power 4 opponent. Now you're like, okay, great. The Big 12's been doing this. Why are we patting the SEC on the back? Because of what happened prior to this announcement. It got a little bit overlooked, but the college football playoff on Wednesday announced that its first rankings will be coming out on November 4th. And for the first time, they will use what they're calling enhanced metrics to help evaluate schedule strength and how teams perform against their slate. This was announced by the College Football Playoff on Wednesday. ESPN writes here, in the current schedule strength metric, more weight will now be applied to games against strong opponents. A new added metric of record strength will help the committee determine how teams performed against their schedule, rewarding those that beat high-quality opponents while minimizing the penalty of losing to one. These changes will also provide minimal reward for beating a lower-quality opponent while imposing a greater penalty for losing to one of those. A day after the College Football Playoff announces that news, the SEC says, we're expanding to 9 conference games, something they have been hesitant to do for years now, dare I say decades. That's not a coincidence. The SEC has rigged the system. The SEC clearly knows that this new college football playoff metric is set up heavily in their favor. I'm not saying they picked it. I'm not saying they made up the metric. I'm not sitting here saying that they have the formula for the metric. What I am saying, and what there's no doubt in my mind on, is that the SEC is simply moving to 9 conference games because they damn well know that this metric that was announced for the College Football Playoff Committee on Wednesday will heavily benefit them. And that if they can continue to convince the masses that they are head and shoulders above the rest in the college football world, then this metric will benefit them tremendously because their losses will basically be meaningless. It's just like what happens in the AP poll, right? Well, if you stack all these SEC teams in there, what happens? If the 10th team loses to the 23rd team, well, the 10th team goes down to maybe 16. You got the 23rd team that moves up to 15, and, it's a wash. It's all good for the SEC. So that is exactly what is going on here. The new metric comes out Wednesday, and then you get the Thursday, and the SEC says, voila, we'll play 9 conference games. I promise you that is not a coincidence. Not a chance. That is carefully crafted by the SEC. And you know what? They're going to laugh all the way to the bank. That's exactly what they're going to do. Now, Evan asks, is this a good thing for the Big 12? Well, It's only a good thing for the Big 12 if the Big 12 can get multiple non-conference games against SEC opponents, since they're going to play non-cons against Power Fours, which they're already doing, but they're admitting they're going to keep scheduling those. The Big 12 should try to schedule as many SEC games as they can. But no, overall, I don't think this is good because it clearly reeks to me of a stacked deck. The SEC has been holding off on going to 9 games forever. And now the College Football Playoff Committee says, hey, we're going to change the way we kind of do this. And we've got this new metric that's kind of like strength of schedule, but really favors the SEC essentially. Okay, sure, we'll play non-conference games. That's basically what happened here. That's it. So I think it stinks to high heaven. But the SEC is a winner this week. All right, our next winner of the week in the Big 12. I will go to BYU. The Cougars going with Bear Bachmeier as their starting quarterback. They roll with a true freshman. A lot of people thought that Hillstead out of Utah State might have been the favorite, but I love this move for BYU. I know some of you are going to say, oh, man, true freshman. If you're not certain on the other two, if you don't think the veteran signal callers who really had no legit experience at this level, if they weren't knocking your socks off in camp, if they weren't saying, hey, we're the steady hand that you need right now at BYU, then roll with the big stud. Roll with the big-time freshman, Bachmeier. I'm good with that. Dude was a 4-star prospect. He had offers from some of the top programs in the country. Oregon, Notre Dame, Alabama, A&M, Michigan. He ends up at Stanford, but he hits the portal as a freshman this spring. He comes here with his brother, and he's 6'2", 225. And apparently what BYU liked the most about him this spring and this summer is that his passing game came along tremendously. So I think they'll lean on him as a runner. They'll keep it safe on the passing front, and they know they've got a top-tier defense. So I love this. Rather than going with the veteran guy that has a very, very low ceiling, even if the floor is higher, just go with the kid. Go with Bachmeier. Let the 6'2", 225-pounder have some fun out there. Obviously, don't go nuts, but I'm all in on this move for BYU. I think this is going to be fantastic. There will be bumps in the road. There will be freshman mistakes. That's what happens when you start a true freshman, all right? It is what it is. But if you're a BYU fan, roll with those. I mean, Jake Retzlaff made plenty of mistakes, but you could actually end up with a quarterback upgrade if Bachmeier progresses and develops the way that a lot of people think that he can. As a former 4-star prospect, true freshman, I just am fascinated by this, and I'm really excited for BYU. I know I have not been high on BYU leading up to the season, and I'm not changing my predictions, but if this kid hits, and I would love for him to hit, I mean, it's a game changer, not just for BYU, but it's a game changer in the Big 12 is what it is. So that was big time. Absolutely big time when that news came down here this week. And the other winner that I will share with you here, UCF naming its starting quarterback, and they were surprising as well. Cam Fancher getting the starting job. He beats out Ja'Cory Brown, who was a returning quarterback for UCF. And then he also beat out the Indiana transfer, Taven Jackson, who a lot of people thought was the front runner in this deal. But it's not. Cam Fancher is the veteran of this group. He played at Florida Atlantic most recently, and he had, some good moments, some not so good moments. Before that, he was at Marshall. So I'm looking at this and I'm saying, okay, Ja'Cory Brown can't throw the ball. We saw that last year. And then we've got Taven Jackson, who, once again, I thought was going to be the guy. Comes here from Indiana, highly recruited, high ceiling, but it's Fancher who ends up winning the job. And one reason that Fancher won the job, if you read some of the quotes from Scott Frost leading up to this pick, he said that Fancher, he was impressed by his experience, and that background was apparent early in camp. Scott Frost said that he was basically very quickly the leader of this team. He's played more ball. The other guys caught up a little bit, but you could see early on, per Scott Frost, that Cam Fancher has been in this position before. So once again, I don't think UCF's going to make a lot of noise this year, but based on everything I've read and digested on this, I like the pick for Scott Frost, and it was not the pick that a lot of people would have expected even a month ago outside the program. So we've got really two new quarterbacks now that we're watching and following closely in the Big 12 for different reasons. You got the young true freshman stud in Bachmeier at BYU, and then you have the veteran steady hand in Cam Fancher at UCF. So those are my three winners this week in the Big 12 Conference. I'm Pete Mundo. Welcome in. Glad you're here as always as a part of the show. So as we get it going, please do hit the like button on the video and make sure you're subscribed because college football's here. And leave us your questions. I'll do some Q&A at the end of this video tonight as well after I give you my three losers. All right, let's start with my first loser of the week in the Big 12. Kansas State. Now, I picked Kansas State to win and cover against Iowa State in this week's prediction. Then the injury report came out. And this is new for the Big 12. But I couldn't believe how many players aren't playing for Kansas State. I'm looking at this thing, and I'm like, why don't you give me a list of who is playing, Chris Kleiman? This is nuts. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I got a dozen guys that are out. A couple of guys doubtful. It's like it's week 0. How's this possible? So I'm not changing my prediction, but it probably does go to show you now that we're going to have these injury reports in the Big 12, it probably would be wise to give you my picks after the injury reports come out. You know, it just probably makes sense. But I'm going to stick with my pick. I'm not going to change off of Kansas State at all. All right. But I'm looking at it and saying to myself, okay, let's actually see what this all means, how this is going to play out. And it does have me a little more nervous for Saturday for Kansas State than I otherwise would have been going into this game. I just couldn't believe it. All right. My other loser of the week is Texas Tech. And that's because of what happened to Quentin Joyner. Running backs out for the season, sustained a knee injury last Saturday in a scrimmage, and he was one of the many notable transfers that joined Texas Tech this offseason. Last year, he finished second on USC in rushing yards, had 500 yards on 63 carries, appeared in 5 games as a true freshman, and it was a non-contact injury. He left USC, came back to his home state, went to Manor High School outside of Austin, same school as Taj Brooks, who, of course, carried the load at running back for Texas Tech the last couple of seasons. But he's done for the year. But I will tell you, on our Heartland College Sports forums, I would love for you to join us on those. Our Tech fans on the forums are very high on Jacoby Williams and Cameron Dickey. Now, we watched them last year. They combined for 81 carries, 461 yards, 3 touchdowns. But, you know, you really don't have a feel for these two guys that, you know, had nice seasons, but clearly were not in Taj Brooks' roles last year. But our Tech insiders on our message boards, all right, get on there. If you're not on there, they're free. Our Tech fans on our message boards are really high on Jacoby Williams and Cameron Dickey. These guys were going to get run anyway. Now they're going to be a 1-2 punch. And our Tech folks think that they're still going to be one of the best 1-2 punches of any Big 12 backfield this season. So I'm going to roll with them here. But still, you lose Quentin Joyner. That's a loss just based on the fact that he was your starter. He was the guy that you wanted to roll with this season. And now he's done after a non-contact injury. I mean, that's just, that is brutal if you're Joy McGuire and Texas Tech. So that one definitely stings. So Tech, I still got to make them a loser this week just because of that. Now, my final loser, before I get to the Q&A, and throw your questions right now in the chat, like the video, However you're watching us, just drop the comments and the questions. I'll get to them here at the end of the show. All right. The Mike Gundy quarterback situation. Not ideal. They're playing on Thursday, UT Martin in Stillwater, and Mike Gundy took to the podium on Thursday and is like, yeah, I don't know who my quarterback's going to be. Or at least he didn't have an update on who his quarterback was going to be. So, you look at it and you say to yourself, okay, what are we doing here? I mean, what's the plan for Mike Gundy? Now, a couple of years ago, don't forget, all right? A couple of years ago, what happened? He played 3 quarterbacks. He ends up with Alan Bowman. He gets to a Big 12 championship game, gets blown out by Texas, but still he got there. Last year's a mess. Now it's like, do we go with Hoss Haney, the TCU transfer, or do we go with Zane Flores? He says they're both competitive. Flores is a redshirt freshman from Nebraska, one of Oklahoma State's top signees in 2023. Meantime, you got Haney, sophomore transfer from TCU, dual threat ability, and also a very good option. If I'm Mike Gundy, as much as last or 2 years ago, you go back to that 23 season, he was playing 3 quarterbacks at a time at one point. I just don't think you can do that. Pick one of these guys and roll with them. All right? I don't care which one you pick. I would probably lean Flores. He's been in the system. But then again, Mike Gundy cleaned house this past offseason. So how much does Zane Flores being around and knowing this system really matter? If Haney's the guy, just go. And maybe Gundy's just playing it close to the vest because that's what he wants to do, and that's how Mike Gundy goes, and it's never going to be all that traditional. But, man, pick a guy and roll with them for a month, and let's see how it plays out. All right? That's what you got to do here pretty soon. One guy's got to get those first-team reps because, heck, you got Oregon week 2. I mean, my goodness, that's going to be here fast. So those are my losers this week: Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, and Kansas State. There you go. Let's get to your questions on the show. What do you say? A little Q&A time. Let's dive into it here. Drop them in right now. Evan asks, Pete, why are you not in Dublin? Because I like my marriage and my kids. And, I don't want to get myself in a lot of trouble by drinking a bunch of pints in Dublin this week. So I did not make the trip. As some of you may know, too, by day, I do a radio show in Kansas City on KCMO Talk Radio. So I've got that whole job. I've got this. And Dublin was not going to make the cut. It's just, and I understand this will be good promotion for Farmageddon and the Big 12. But these games belong on campus. They do. All right, they do. What else? Give me your questions here. All right. Keith asks, which Big 12 SEC game is the most impactful to the conference with a Big 12 win this year? It's a good question. I said the most important non-conference game for the Big 12 is Mississippi State and Arizona State. And the reason for that is because the Big 12 can't afford to lose it. If you lose it, that's an absolute, utter disaster, right? You have a Mississippi State team picked at the bottom of the Big 12 or at the bottom of the SEC. You have an Arizona State team picked at the top of the Big 12. If Arizona State loses to an SEC bottom feeder, we're never going to hear the end of it. So that's why I think that's the most important game. But if you're talking about, let's say, a Big 12 win, shocking the system and being really important for, let's say, the Big 12, I would probably lean to Kansas at Missouri. Missouri is a team that a lot of people are looking at and saying because of their schedule, they think that Missouri can end up winning 10 games. Kansas not getting a lot of love. If Jalen Daniels goes to Columbia and just lights up the Tigers for a Big 12 program that most people expect to be middle of the pack, against the Mizzou team that a lot of people think can actually finish near the top of the SEC because they have a pretty good schedule lineup this year in terms of, being fairly weak. That would be awesome. That's probably the one. I'm trying to think of what other Big 12 SEC games. I guess Baylor, Auburn. But once again, I think Baylor's going to take care of business there. Should take care of business. So I would lean on that KU Missouri game in terms of what it would mean for the Big 12 with a win. Desert Devil says, Pete, I promise you ASU will smoke Mississippi State like a 1.5 gram blunt at a Snoop Dogg concert. Okay. All right. Well, that is definitely smoking for sure. Pete, what do you think about the UCF quarterback situation? It's Cam Fancher. I don't mind. I was hoping for Ja'Cory Brown. UCF was one of my winners this week. I just talked about that. Go back, listen to the start of the show. I like the move. Ja'Cory Brown can't throw the ball. That was the problem there. So I'm good with this pick. Go with the veteran. Pete, over under on David Bailey sacks. That's of course the Stanford transfer to Texas Tech. I've got 7.5. Ooh, that's good. I'm going over. I could get him to 9.5, 10 pretty easily. I mean, dude's an absolute stud. Absolute stud. Get in your questions. Dennis says here, since both Kansas State and Iowa State are rated in the top 25, will the loser most likely drop out of the top 25? Depends how they lose. I think it's really that simple, right? What kind of game do we get? Do we get a 10-9 Farmageddon game like a couple of years ago? If Kansas State loses to Iowa State, I don't think they fall out of the top 25. That would be crazy unless they get blown out. Because K-State's at 17, Iowa State's at 22. If Kansas State steamrolls Iowa State, then, I could see Iowa State falling out of that top 25. That wouldn't shock me one bit. I could definitely see that happening. But listen, if Iowa State gets back on track, you beat Iowa in week 2, you'll be back in the top 25. I wouldn't worry too much about that right now, this early in the season. And there's a lot of Big 12 teams just on the outside looking in when you talk about that top 25. Receiving votes, BYU just missed it, Utah just missed it, and Baylor just missed it. Those are the 3 teams that are 26, 27, 28 in the top 25. So the Big 12 should be well represented when all is said and done. Excellent work. Great questions. College football's back. Week 0 is coming in hot. Thank you, guys. Leave us a 5-star podcast rating and review. Send me a screenshot to Pete Mundo, Mundo, at heartlandcollegesports.com. The best podcast review of the week. Get some free merch. T-shirts. All right, we got hoodies. We're all taken care of. We're taking care of you as well. And if you're on YouTube, please make sure you are subscribed to the channel and hit that like button. We'll be back with you this weekend talking about the games, reacting. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the football, and go Big 12.